We forgot to book your hotel room. All the hotels are sold out because of graduation. You'll have to drive back home. That's what my mother said. Her voice flat and rehearsed like she'd practiced the exact delivery. I'm Jessica Morgan, 29 years old, and I had just spent the last 2 hours driving from Atlanta to Miami for my sister's medical school graduation. When I heard my father's voice in the background cut through the silence, everything changed. Just tell her the truth, Eleanor. We don't want her there anyway. She always ruins everything. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The I-75 stretched ahead of me, palm trees blurring past at 70 miles per hour. My sister Sienna's voice came through next, sharp and triumphant. Finally, I can actually enjoy my day without her judging everything. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, understood, and ended the call. Right there on the highway, I made a U-turn at the next exit. But I wasn't heading back to Atlanta. I was heading to Coral Gables to see Marcus Chun, the attorney whose business card had been sitting in my wallet for 8 months. What I set in motion over the next 48 hours would dismantle every comfortable lie my family had built on my dime. Hello, beloved listeners. Thank you for joining me today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. I'm always curious to know which corners of the world you're tuning in from. Let me know your city in the comments. Enjoy the story. That phone call wasn't just a rejection. It was confirmation of what I'd suspected for years. I pulled over at a rest stop, hands shaking, and scrolled through my banking app. The numbers told a story my family would never admit. Over the past 13 years, I'd transferred $183,000 to them. Not loans, gifts, or so they called them. Because asking your successful daughter for money and never paying it back isn't borrowing. It's just what family does, right? Growing up in Savannah, Georgia, I was never the golden child. That title belonged to Sienna from the moment she was born when I was 7. Our parents, Michael and Eleanor Morgan, ran a small accounting firm that barely stayed afloat. We lived in a modest colonial on the east side of town, the kind with peeling paint and a front porch that sagged in the middle. Money was always tight, but somehow Sienna's dance classes, piano lessons, and private tutoring never got cut from the budget. My clarinet rental cancelled after 6 months because it was too expensive. By the time I was 16, I was working weekends at a local grocery store, bagging produce and mopping floors for $8.50 an hour. Sienna, 9 years old at the time, got a new bike for her birthday, bright pink with streamers and a bell. I got a card. When I asked why, Dad said, "You're old enough to understand we can't always afford extras." But Sienna's bike wasn't an extra. My expectations were. The pattern solidified through high school. I graduated 3rd in my class, got into Georgia Tech with a partial scholarship. Sienna made honor roll in middle school, and we went to the Olive Garden to celebrate. I was accepted to one of the top engineering programs in the state. And Mum said, "That's nice, honey," without looking up from her crossword puzzle. I worked 3 jobs through college to cover what scholarships didn't. Sienna got a car for her 16th birthday. A used Honda Civic that Dad spent $4,500 on. When I graduated with my bachelor's in computer science, debt-free, and with a job offer at a tech firm in Atlanta starting at $62,000. Dad shook my hand and said, "Now you can help out around here." And I did. God help me, I did. The request started small. $500 to fix Mum's transmission. $1,200 to cover a gap in business taxes. Then Sienna got into the University of Miami, full ride for tuition, but living expenses weren't covered. "Can you help with her rent?" Mum asked over Thanksgiving dinner my 2nd year working. "Just until she gets settled. $800 a month. You're doing so well, Jessica. We're so proud." I said yes. I always said yes. For 2 years, I sent $800 every month. That's $19,200 total. But it didn't stop there. Junior year of Sienna's undergrad, she needed a new laptop for her pre-med classes. $2,100 for a MacBook Pro. Senior year, Mum called crying because the roof was leaking. $12,000 for repairs. Then Dad's car broke down. $6,500 for a replacement. When Sienna got into medical school, also at University of Miami, the celebrations were loud. I flew down for the acceptance party they threw at a rented venue, $3,000 that I later found out Dad put on a credit card and asked me to pay off. I did. Medical school meant more expenses. Books, equipment, board exam fees. Over 4 years, I covered $18,000 in costs her scholarships didn't touch. I was making good money by then. I'd climbed to operations manager at my firm, then director. My salary hit $140,000 by age 28. To my family, that meant I was rich. To me, it meant I could finally breathe a little. But every time I tried to save, the phone rang. The only person who ever saw me was Grandma Ruth, my mum's mother. She lived in Charleston in a small cottage by the water, and I visited her every few months. She'd make sweet tea and lemon bars, and we'd sit on her porch watching boats drift by. "You're carrying them, Jess," she told me once when I was 25. "They'll bleed you dry if you let them." I brushed it off. That was family, wasn't it? Sacrifice. Ruth passed away 3 years ago from a stroke. At the funeral, Sienna cried beautifully, mascara running in perfect streaks. Mum and Dad accepted condolences like grieving royalty. I stood in the back, numb, holding the program. 2 weeks later, Ruth's attorney called me to her office in Charleston. She'd left me a trust fund, $250,000, set up specifically so that only I could access it. No one else in the family even knew it existed. The letter she left with it was short. "Jessica, this is for you alone. Build something they can't touch. Don't tell them. Love, Ruth." I didn't tell them. It's for the first time in my life, I kept something for myself, but the requests kept coming. When I was 27, I came home for Christmas with an idea. I'd been working on a concept for a telemedicine startup, using AI to help rural patients get preliminary diagnoses before seeing specialists. I'd researched it for months, built financial models, even sketched out a basic app interface. Over dinner, I mentioned it to my parents and Sienna, who was home for winter break. "That's ambitious," Dad said, in the tone that meant he thought it was foolish. Sienna, though, leaned in. "Tell me more about the AI model. How does it integrate patient data?" I explained everything. Algorithms, data privacy, the gap in the market. She asked detailed questions, took notes on her phone. I thought she was just curious. 6 months later, I saw the announcement on LinkedIn. Sienna and her boyfriend, Trevor Marks, had launched MediQuick AI. The description was almost word for word what I'd explained at Christmas. They'd filed a provisional patent 4 months after that dinner. 8 months later, they sold the platform to Health Tech Solutions for $400,000. Sienna posted about it everywhere. Interviews in local med school blogs, a feature in the University of Miami newsletter. She called it her brainchild, developed during late-night study sessions in medical school. Trevor, who had a tech background, was credited as co-founder. My name? Never mentioned. I called her the day the sale went public. "Sienna, that was my idea. From Christmas. You know, it was..." She laughed, light and dismissive. "Ideas are cheap, Jess. Execution is what matters. Besides, you never did anything with it. I just made it real." I hung up and stared at my apartment wall for an hour. When I brought it up to Mum, she sighed. "Don't be jealous, Jessica. It's unbecoming. Sister worked hard. You should be happy for her." That was the moment something cracked inside me. Not broke. Just cracked. Enough that I started keeping a spreadsheet. Every dollar I'd sent, every request I'd fulfilled, logged with dates and amounts. I didn't know what I'd do with it, but I knew I needed to see it clearly. Which brings me back to that phone call on the I-75. Sienna's graduation was supposed to be a family event. I'd booked my hotel room at the same Marriott as everyone else 3 months in advance. Paid $340 a night for 2 nights. Confirmed it twice. When I called Mum that morning to coordinate arrival times, she dropped the bomb. "There's no room." Forgot. Then Dad's voice, brutal and clear. "We don't want her there. She always ruins everything. Ruins everything. I'd paid for the roof over their heads, the car in their driveway, the laptop Sienna used to steal my idea, and I ruined everything." I took the exit toward Coral Gables and dialed Marcus's chun. I'd met Marcus at a tech industry mixer in Atlanta 8 months prior. He specialized in business litigation and asset recovery, had a sharp reputation and a quiet intensity. We'd exchanged cards, and he'd said, "If you ever need help untangling family financial messes, call me. I've seen too many smart people drained dry by relatives." I'd laughed it off then. Now, driving with my heart pounding and rage sharpening into clarity, I needed him. "Marcus Chun," he answered on the second ring. "Marcus, it's Jessica Morgan. We met in Atlanta last fall. I need a consult. Today, if possible." "I'm in Miami." There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. "Jessica." "Yeah, I remember. What's going on?" My family just disinvited me from my sister's graduation after I drove 2 hours to get there. And I've given them $183,000 over the years with no repayment expectation documented. I want to explore my legal options. Another pause. Longer this time. Where are you right now? Coral Gables exit. I'm in my office. Come by in 20 minutes. We'll talk. Marcus's office sat on the 3rd floor of a sleek building near the University of Miami campus, glass and steel reflecting the late afternoon sun. I parked in the garage and rode the elevator up, still in the jeans and blazer I'd worn, thinking I'd be sitting in a graduation ceremony by now. The receptionist, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, directed me to a conference room. Marcus walked in 5 minutes later, carrying a yellow legal pad and a tablet. He was in his early 40s, graying at the temples, with the posture of someone who'd spent years in courtrooms. Jessica, thanks for coming in on short notice. We shook hands, and he gestured for me to sit. I laid it all out. The years of money, the stolen idea, the phone call, every detail I could remember, including the spreadsheet I'd been keeping. Marcus took notes, asked clarifying questions. Do you have documentation of the transfers? Every single one. Bank statements, Venmo records, checks, and the idea Sienna took. Do you have proof it originated with you? I pulled up my phone and showed him the Notes app entry from Christmas 2 years prior. Time-stamped December 23rd, outlining the telemedicine AI concept. I also had emails I'd sent to a former colleague in January asking for feedback on the pitch, before Sienna and Trevor filed their patent in April. Marcus studied the screen, then looked up. This is solid. The transfers, if framed as loans without documented repayment plans, give us leverage for an unjust enrichment claim. The intellectual property theft is trickier because execution matters in patent law. But we can argue misappropriation if we can prove origin and timeline. Tell me, what do you want out of this? I didn't hesitate. I want them to understand there are consequences. I want to recover as much of that money as legally possible. And I want to make sure they can never do this to me again. He nodded slowly. That's going to require aggressive action. Court filings, possibly public record. It'll burn bridges. The bridges are already ash, I said. Marcus smiled, grim but approving. Then let's build a case. Over the next 2 hours, we outlined a strategy. Step 1, send demand letters to my parents and Sienna for repayment of the $183,000, framed as loans made in good faith. Step 2, file an unjust enrichment claim if they refused. Step 3, pursue a separate claim against Sienna for intellectual property misappropriation related to the telemedicine platform sale. Marcus quoted me a retainer of $15,000 to start, with additional costs depending on how far things escalated. I pulled out my checkbook and wrote it on the spot. Ruth's money, finally being used to protect me instead of fund them. I'll draft the demand letters tonight, Marcus said as I stood to leave. We'll send them certified mail on Monday. Expect fireworks. Good, I said. Let them burn. I drove back to Atlanta that night in silence. No music, no podcasts, just the hum of the engine and my thoughts looping. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex in Midtown at 11 p.m., I'd made another decision. Was done being the family ATM, done being invisible, unless they needed something. I blocked my parents' numbers. I blocked Sienna's. I blocked aunts, uncles, cousins, who'd never called except to ask for favors. Then I opened my laptop and started researching. If Sienna could take my idea and make money from it, I could build the better version. The version I'd actually planned. The version that would eclipse hers completely. I pulled up Ruth's trust account. $250,000 sitting there, untouched. I transferred $100,000 into my business checking account and started drafting a business plan. HealthLink AI. That's what I'd call it. Not some lazy knockoff like MediQuick. A real platform with real innovation. I spent the weekend mapping it out. AI-assisted diagnostics for underserved populations, integrated with telehealth, built on a model that prioritized patient privacy and data security. I reached out to Priya Kapoor, my best friend from Georgia Tech, who'd gone on to get her PhD in machine learning from Stanford. She was working at a research lab in Palo Alto, but had mentioned wanting to get back into startups. Priya, I need a co-founder. I've got capital, a plan, and a score to settle. Interested? Her reply came an hour later. Send me the deck. If it's solid, I'm in. It was solid. By Monday night, Priya and I were on a video call, whiteboarding algorithms and discussing go-to-market strategy. By Wednesday, we'd filed our LLC paperwork in Delaware. By Friday, I'd hired a patent attorney to file our own provisional patents, covering innovations Sienna's platform hadn't even touched. And on Monday, exactly 1 week after that phone call on the highway, Marcus's demand letters arrived at my family's doorstep via certified mail. Mum called 14 times that day. Dad called 9. Sienna called 6 and sent 23 texts. I didn't answer. Marcus forwarded me their responses. Mum's reply, penned by a local attorney in Savannah, claimed the money was gifts freely given in a spirit of familial love, with no expectation of repayment. Dad's response was angrier, accusing me of extortion and betrayal during a time of celebration. Sienna's attorney argued that the telemedicine idea was independently conceived and developed without any reliance on Jessica Morgan's alleged prior concepts. Marcus filed suit in Fulton County Superior Court 3 weeks later. 2 claims. 1, unjust enrichment against Michael and Eleanor Morgan for $183,000 plus interest and legal fees. 2, misappropriation of intellectual property against Sienna Morgan and Trevor Marks, seeking $400,000 in damages, the exact amount of their platform sale plus punitive damages. The filings became public record. Local legal blogs picked it up because of the med school angle. Rising doctor sued by sister for IP theft. Sienna's reputation took a hit immediately. Medical school colleagues started asking questions. Trevor, her boyfriend, panicked and tried to settle privately. We declined. While the lawsuits crawled through discovery, Priya moved to Atlanta, and we leased a small office space in the Ponce City Market Tech Hub, 1,200 square feet with exposed brick and terrible HVAC, but it was ours. We hired 3 developers, 2 contractors specializing in healthcare compliance, and a part-time CFO. With Ruth's money and a small angel round, we closed from a local investor group $500,000 at a $3 million valuation. We had runway. HealthLink AI launched its beta in 8 months. We partnered with rural clinics in Georgia, Alabama, and South Carolina, offering our diagnostic tool free for the first year to build data and credibility. The AI model Priya designed was objectively better than anything Mediquick had done. It learned faster, integrated with more AHR systems, and had a user interface that actual doctors praised. By month 10, we had 47 clinics using the platform. By month 14, we closed a Series A, $8 million, led by a healthcare-focused VC firm out of Boston. My ownership stake, 35%, suddenly had real value. TechCrunch wrote about us. So did MedCity News. I did a podcast interview where the host asked about my background. I mentioned I'd started the company after my family, including a med school graduate, had tried to take credit for my ideas. I didn't name Sienna, but people connected dots fast. The attention brought more scrutiny to her. Someone sent an anonymous tip to the Florida Board of Medicine about irregularities in her residency. Turns out, Sienna had been involved in 3 separate patient incidents during her first year, minor but documented. One involved a medication error that didn't cause lasting harm but should have been reported more thoroughly. Another involved a misdiagnosis that a senior resident caught in time. The third was a procedural mistake during a routine surgery. None were catastrophic, but the pattern raised flags. The board launched an investigation. Meanwhile, our lawsuit moved forward. Discovery revealed that Sienna had, in fact, referenced my Christmas explanation in texts to Trevor. Jess explained this model at dinner. We should build it. Smoking gun. Her attorneys tried to argue that discussing an idea wasn't theft, but the timeline, my documented notes, and her own texts made their case weak. We pushed for trial. By month 18 of running HealthLink AI, we were generating $200,000 in monthly recurring revenue. We'd expanded to 200 clinics across 9 states. I hired a PR firm, grew the team to 15 full-time employees, and moved into a bigger office. Forbes Under 30 featured me in their Healthcare Innovators list. The article mentioned that I'd overcome familial obstacles to launch a groundbreaking platform. Again, no names, But Google did the rest. Sienna's social media mentions turned brutal. Comments on her posts asked why she'd stolen from her sister. Her Instagram, once full of polished selfies and motivational med school quotes, went dark. 2 years after that phone call, almost to the day, my phone started ringing off the hook. Unknown numbers. I let them go to voicemail. 47 missed calls in one day. Then an email from Dad's address appeared in my spam filter. Subject line, "Please, we need to talk." I read it. The tone was desperate. Sienna was being sued for medical malpractice. $890,000 in damages claimed by a patient who'd suffered complications after a surgery where Sienna had been on the team. She'd apparently made a critical error in post-op care that led to an infection. Her malpractice insurance was capped at $500,000. She was on the hook personally for the rest, plus legal fees that were already at $120,000. Mum and Dad were facing foreclosure. They'd refinanced the house 4 times over the years, pulling equity to fund their lifestyle and Sienna's expenses. The mortgage was now $280,000 on a house worth maybe $310,000, and they were 3 months behind on payments. Dad admitted in the email that they'd been living beyond their means, hoping Sienna's doctor salary would eventually help stabilize them. But she was still in residency, making $58,000 a year, and now drowning in legal bills. The kicker: they'd hired an attorney to challenge Ruth's trust, claiming she'd been unduly influenced or mentally unfit when she created it. They wanted access to family assets to cover their debts. They were coming after my money. Again, the email ended with a plea. "We need $500,000. You have the means now. We're family. Blood doesn't abandon blood in times of crisis." I forwarded it to Marcus without comment. His reply came an hour later. "Want to meet them?" I did, but on my terms. I agreed to a meeting in Miami, neutral ground, at a restaurant called Seabreeze on Ocean Drive, public, busy, and where I knew I could walk out anytime. I flew down on a Thursday afternoon, checked into the Ritz-Carlton in South Beach, $450 a night, and enjoyed a room with a view of the Atlantic. The next morning, I met Marcus for breakfast at his office to review the plan. He'd prepared a binder, 89 pages of documentation. Every bank transfer I'd made to my family, every Venmo, every check, categorized and totaled. Screenshots of Sienna's texts to Trevor about my idea. Emails showing the timeline of my concept development before their patent filing, legal filings from our ongoing lawsuits. And the most damning addition, audio recordings. Marcus had hired a private investigator 6 months prior, standard practice in contentious family litigation, to document anything that might be relevant. The PI had befriended one of Mum's close friends from her book club. In a recorded conversation, which was legal in Florida with one-party consent, since the friend knew she was being recorded, Mum had admitted, "We keep Jessica around when we need her wallet. But honestly, she's too rigid for big family events. Always judging, always acting superior. It's exhausting. We don't really want her at things. We just want her money." The friend, uncomfortable, had asked, "Don't you think that's harsh?" Mum had laughed. "It's practical." Hearing that audio in Marcus's office, my hands stayed steady. No tears, just cold, clarifying rage. "They're going to hear this," I said. At the restaurant, every word. We arrived at Seabreeze at noon. The place was packed with tourists, Latin music drifting from outdoor speakers, waiters balancing trays of mojitos and ceviche. I spotted my parents at a corner table, Dad in a polo shirt that looked 2 sizes too big, Mum in a floral dress with her hair freshly colored but roots showing. Sienna sat between them, dark circles under her eyes, thinner than I remembered. I walked over with Marcus beside me, carrying the binder in a leather satchel. "Jessica," Mum stood, arms open for a hug. I didn't move. "Sit down," I said. She hesitated, then sat. Dad extended his hand toward Marcus. "I'm Michael Morgan, Jessica's father." Marcus didn't shake it. "Marcus Chun? Miss Morgan's attorney. Let's begin." We sat. A waiter approached, but Marcus waved him off. "This won't take long." I opened the binder and slid the first section across the table. Bank statements, highlighted in yellow, showing $183,000 in transfers over 13 years. "This is what I've given you. Not loaned. Given, because you called them gifts. Dad's jaw tightened. We never asked you to keep track like some kind of accountant. You're right, I didn't have to. But I did, because I knew. I flipped to the next section. Sienna's texts to Trevor. Her face went pale as she read her own words. Jess explained this model at dinner. We should build it. That was private, Sienna whispered. It's evidence, Marcus said. And it's going to be entered into court record when we go to trial in 3 months. Mum's voice shook. Jessica, we came here to ask for help. Your sister is being destroyed by a malpractice case. She made 1 mistake. 3 mistakes, I corrected. The board is investigating 3 incidents. This lawsuit is just the one that went public. Sienna's eyes filled with tears. You sent them the tip, didn't you? You ruined my career. I met her gaze, level and cold. You ruined it yourself. I just made sure the right people were paying attention. Dad slammed his palm on the table, making silverware jump. This is what we're talking about. You've always been vindictive, Jessica. Always holding grudges. We need help, and you're sitting here playing lawyer. I'm not playing. I pulled out the next document. The demand letter Marcus had sent them 2 years ago. You called this extortion. You hired an attorney to fight repayment of money you claimed was freely given. Now you're here asking for $500,000 more. Do you hear yourselves? Mom's tears started, mascara streaking. We're desperate, Jess. The house, Sienna's case. We have nothing left. You're our daughter. Doesn't that mean anything? It used to, I said quietly. Then I pulled out my phone, opened the audio file, and placed it in the center of the table. I pressed play. Mum's voice filled the space between us. We keep Jessica around when we need her wallet, but honestly, she's too rigid for big family events. Always judging, always acting superior. It's exhausting. We don't really want her at things. We just want her money. The recording played for 90 seconds, every word, every laugh. The practicality of using me. When it ended, the silence was suffocating. Mum's face had gone white. Dad stared at the phone like it might explode. Sienna looked at Mum, betrayed. You said that. Mum stammered. I didn't. It was taken out of context. There's no context that makes that okay, I said. I stood, Marcus following my lead. Here's what's going to happen. The lawsuit proceeds. You'll either settle for a payment plan on the $183,000, or we go to trial and I win a judgment with interest and penalties. Sienna, you'll settle the IP case or face a jury that's seen your texts. Either way, you're paying back the $400,000 you made from my idea. As for the $500,000 you want now, hire a financial advisor, sell the house, downsize. I don't care. But you won't get another cent from me. Ever, Jessica, please? Dad's voice cracked. We're your family. No, I said, picking up the binder. Family doesn't keep score unless they have to. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't use you and then admit they don't want you around. You're my relatives. That's biology. But you're not my family. Not anymore. I pulled out a final document and placed it in front of them. Restraining order, pre-signed by a judge pending activation. If you contact me again, for any reason, through any channel, this goes into effect immediately. You'll be barred from coming within 500 feet of me, my business, or my home. Violation means arrest. Sienna sobbed openly now. Dad looked gutted. Mum just stared at the table. I turned and walked out of Seabreeze into the Miami sunshine, Marcus beside me. Tourists laughed and took selfies around us. The ocean sparkled blue and indifferent. That, Marcus said as we reached his car, was the most controlled demolition I've ever witnessed. They earned it, I said. We drove back to his office, filed the restraining order activation as a precaution, and I flew back to Atlanta that evening. I didn't look back. The fallout was swift. Sienna's malpractice case settled 3 months later for $780,000. Her insurance covered $500,000. She declared bankruptcy to discharge the remaining $280,000 plus her legal fees, which had climbed to $140,000. Bankruptcy meant selling everything she owned. The condo Trevor and she had bought with the Mediquick money? Gone. Her car, a leased BMW she couldn't afford anymore, repossessed. She moved back in with our parents temporarily, but that lasted only 2 months before the foreclosure sale forced them out of the Savannah house. The house sold at auction for $295,000, barely covering the mortgage and fees. Mum and Dad relocated to a 1-bedroom apartment in a suburb outside Savannah. 850 square feet for $1,100 a month. Dad, 62 years old, took a job in customer service for a cable company, working phone support for $17 an hour. Mum, who'd always prided herself on running the accounting firm, now worked part-time at a local tax prep service during filing season, making maybe $12,000 a year. Sienna lost her medical license for 5 years due to the board's investigation findings. Not permanent, but career-destroying in terms of momentum. She ended up working as a medical receptionist at a walk-in clinic, $16.50 an hour, scheduling appointments and filing insurance claims. The lawsuit they tried to bring against Ruth's trust was dismissed with prejudice. The judge found no evidence of undue influence or mental incapacity and ordered them to pay my legal fees for defending it. $47,000. That judgment is still being collected through wage garnishments. Of the $183,000 I sued to recover, we settled for $95,000 paid over 10 years through garnishments on Dad's and Sienna's wages. I'll never see all of it, but the point was made. My restraining order remained active. I received violation notices twice, once when Sienna tried to send a LinkedIn message, and once when Mum sent a letter to my office address. Both times I forwarded the evidence to the court. They were fined $500 each. After that, silence. Meanwhile, HealthLink AI continued to grow. By year 3, we were operating in 18 states with 600 clinic partners. Annual recurring revenue hit $12 million. We raised a Series B, $25 million at a $90 million valuation. I moved from our original office into a full floor in a renovated building in Midtown, 8,000 square feet with a team of 40. Forbes did a feature story. So did Bloomberg. I spoke at HIMSS, the big healthcare IT conference, on a panel about AI ethics. And then, in year 4, we got the acquisition offer. TechMed Corp, a healthcare technology giant based in Boston, offered $45 million for HealthLink AI, all cash, no earnout clauses. My 35% stake translated to $15.75 million before taxes, $9. $8 million after, Priya and I accepted. The deal closed in 90 days. TechMed kept the entire team. Offered me the role of VP of Innovation with a salary of $380,000 plus annual bonuses tied to product development milestones. I accepted and relocated to a corner office in their Boston headquarters with views of the Charles River. Life became something I'd never imagined as that girl bagging groceries in Savannah. I bought a 3-bedroom penthouse in Midtown Atlanta for $1. $2 million floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Piedmont Park. Renovated it exactly how I wanted. Minimalist, modern, with smart home integration, and a home office that felt like a sanctuary. I invested $2 million in diversified index funds and bonds, working with a financial advisor to ensure I'd never depend on anyone again. I started dating again, casually at first, then seriously. His name was Elliot Reyes, a cardiothoracic surgeon I met through a mutual friend at a hospital fundraiser. He was kind, brilliant, respected boundaries, and never once asked to meet my family. When I told him the whole story over wine one night, he just held my hand and said, "You protected yourself. That's not cruelty. That's survival." I also started a scholarship fund in Ruth's name, the Ruth Morgan Grant for Independent Women in STEM, $500,000 endowment, awarded annually to women estranged from their families who are pursuing careers in science, technology, engineering, or medicine. The application asks one essay question. Describe a time when setting boundaries protected your future. The first year, we funded 5 students. Their thank you letters made me cry for the first time since that phone call on the highway. But this time, they were good tears. I never heard from my parents or Sienna again directly. Mutual acquaintances occasionally reported back that they'd asked about me, how I was doing, if I was happy. The answers filtered back, thriving, successful, moved on. I heard through a cousin. I still occasionally texted with that Sienna eventually applied to PA school, hoping to restart her medical career in a different capacity. I didn't wish her failure. I just didn't care. Mum and Dad stayed in their small apartment. Dad retired at 67 with minimal social security. They survived, but barely. No vacations, no luxuries, no safety net. The life I'd funded for years was gone, replaced by the consequences of their choices. And me? I kept building. Priya and I started consulting on the side for other healthcare startups. I joined 2 boards of directors for early-stage companies. I traveled, real travel, not rushed work trips. Iceland, Japan, New Zealand. I hiked, read, invested in friendships that felt reciprocal. I went to therapy and worked through the guilt that tried to creep in late at night. The voice that whispered, I should have done more, been kinder, given one more chance. My therapist, Dr. Patel, helped me see it clearly. You didn't abandon them. They discarded you first, over and over, until you finally accepted it. Protecting yourself isn't punishment, it's clarity. She was right. 3 years after the acquisition, I was sitting in my Boston office when an email arrived from an unknown address. Subject line, congratulations. The message was short. Saw your tech med promotion. VP of Innovation. You earned it. I always knew you would. I'm sorry we couldn't see it sooner. I hope you're happy. Love, Sienna. I read it twice, felt nothing, deleted it, blocked the address, moved on with my day. Because here's what I learned through all of it. Family isn't about blood. It's about respect, reciprocity, and showing up when it matters. My real family was Priya, who co-built a dream with me. Marcus, who fought for my dignity in court. Elliot, who loved me without conditions. Ruth, who saw me when no one else did and gave me the resources to save myself. The employees at HealthLink AI who believed in the mission. The scholarship recipients who wrote me letters sharing their stories of survival and success. That was family. The people in Savannah who shared my DNA. They were strangers who'd taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't set yourself on fire to keep people warm who won't even acknowledge the heat. And you absolutely do not owe loyalty to people who only valued you as a source of income. They wanted $500,000 to save themselves from problems they created. I built a $45 million company instead. They wanted me invisible unless I was useful. I became widely visible on my own terms. They ruined my sister's graduation because I always ruined everything. I built a life so fulfilling that their absence became a feature, not a bug. The night of that phone call on the I-75, I was crushed. 2 years later, I was free. 5 years later, I was thriving. And now, almost a decade later, I wake up every day in a home I own, in a career I built, surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not what I can provide. That's not revenge. That's justice. And sometimes, justice looks like walking away from people who never deserved a seat at your table in the first place. Then building a table so beautiful they can only see it from the outside, looking in, forever locked out. Not by cruelty, by consequence. Thanks for staying through this entire story. I know it was long, but some journeys can't be rushed. Have you ever had to cut out family members to protect your peace and your future? What would you have done in my position when that phone call came through? I'm genuinely curious. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if you felt used or invisible or taken for granted by people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about boundaries, justice, and building the life you deserve on your own terms. Because you're not alone in this. And your peace matters more than their comfort. See you in the next one.